And in the time of Isa, his followers were called Nazarenes. And we say in Arabic, an-Nasara. An-Nasara. And what the Nazarenes means is the Jews of Nazareth. Because the town of Nazareth, Jesus was Jewish. He was following the law of Moses, and he said clearly, I came not to change the law of Moses, but to fulfill the law. Very clear. Okay? And his followers were Nasara, the Nazarenes. And he was a person who was observant of the Torah, very much observant of the Torah. He was considered to be an inspired teacher. He spent his middle years with a group called the Essenes, who were like, radical rabbis in the desert, Sinai Peninsula. And so he was a teacher. Later on, a prophet, an inspired prophet. That's how he came relative to his people. And so the Nazarenes, they were right in your Mediterranean. Okay? So you see your Mediterranean region. So now this is belief in one God that is coming up in the Mediterranean. Before that, you had Egypt, you had Greece, Rome, producing different thoughts moving all around. But now, this belief is coming out of this area. And later on, we'll study what happens with Paul. But right now, you'll see that the followers of Isa alayhi salam, they were very strong in the area of Syria and our Lebanon and Palestine, all these areas. And then Egypt, they were very strong in this area. And another group developed in the north. Now, how did this other group develop? Jesus had 12 disciples. And these disciples were all Jewish, by the way. Every one of his followers were Jewish. No Gentiles. Gentiles mean like the non-Jews. Every one of them was Jewish. And he was mainly bringing them back to the Torah and the spirit of the Torah. Now, some of the Jews who didn't agree with his teachings, they started to attack him, and they wanted to turn him into the Romans and make him considered to be like a radical teacher. And one of the worst enemies was a person named Saul. And Saul was Jewish himself. And he was very close to many of the disciples, especially one of the disciples whose name was Barnabas. Okay, you may have heard of some of these names, if you study things about Christianity. But Barnabas was very close to Saul. Now, Saul was on the Damascus road, and he claimed he had a vision. And he said he saw like Jesus coming, and he was reborn. And he claimed that he was inspired by Jesus. And he changed his name to Paul. So the name Paul that you hear in Christianity originally was Saul. Okay? And he started changing the teachings. He started saying that, the message of Jesus, it's not exclusive to the Jews. This message can go to other people. Now, of course, the Jews were supposed to provide an example to other people. But the laws of the Torah, this was something that was tailor-made for them. He also said that you can follow other laws. Take the best of all worlds. And this is what we would call today, in Islam, anybody know? Bid'ah. You hear this word, kullu bid'atin dalala, right? It'll take you innovation, right? Okay, so he was bringing in innovations. Now, it is said he was very close to Barnabas, and Barnabas, when he heard he was inspired, brought him to the disciples. The disciples rejected him and kicked him out. They want nothing to do with him. Some people say it is because they remember him as Saul, and he used to torture them. But others say no, it's because of these innovations. He was taking them away from the teachings of Isa alayhi salam. And his concept, if you look at the two movements, the Jesus concept was Torah observant. He was an inspired teachings. It was the religion of Jesus coming from the law of Moses. But Paul, they looked at Jesus as a cosmic figure. He was a savior who died, resurrection. You know, so it was the religion about Jesus. So there's a difference between the two. You see, and this is where Paul's teachings come in. And Paul left with Barnabas, and they went to Greece. After a short time, Barnabas left him, probably because he couldn't stand his teachings, right? So he eventually left him and came back. Paul stayed and taught amongst the Greeks, and eventually he was killed for his teachings. And Paul's followers were then given the name Christians. So this is the first time that the followers were actually called Christians. Before that time, they were Nazarenes and Nasara. They were known as Jews, but the particular brand of Judaism, it was the one of Jesus of Nazareth. Okay? Now, you're a Christian. So a Christian now starts to look at other religions. You have the Dionysius thinking, you have Mithras, you have Horus. So they're now picking and choosing from different concepts and different ways of life. And no doubt, it was difficult to be a Christian in Rome at the time. Because when the Romans wanted to entertain their people, they brought them to the colosseums. And they would bring Christians there and feed them to the lions. Just imagine 20,000 people watching a hungry lion or hyena tear a family apart. They're cheering for it, okay, in the colosseums. We have changed a little bit. We have the Super Bowl today. So the football players tear each other apart. Concussions, right? Some of them are dropping down, heart attacks, you know, whatever. But that's a gladiator. It's a gladiator spirit, you see? So it was difficult to be a Christian during those times. And so, as they say, when in Rome, do like the Romans do. That was one of their sayings. If you can't beat them, you know the rest of it? Join them. If you can't beat them, join them. You see? This is how this came about, because this is a good question you're asking.